All right, well, I feel like doing another one today, so might as well. So this is just some regular water. Okay, we're going to continue this series on terracotta earth clay. So I've got the clay from last time, just put in a jar. Even the really thick clay that was in a package that already had dried out a little bit. It was very hard, leathery hard like this. But if I put it in a jar with some water, it will come back to life in a couple of days and be ready to use again. So I took all the clay that I had in there that had been sitting for months and took it out, and I made it into a big ball in my hands. That's why my hands are covered in powder right now, because it's now dried. But I was able to save all of the clay, even the powdery stuff on the table. You can scoop up and put into a jar like this. Put some water, don't fill it up. The water will soak up. So maybe halfway with water, all the way with clay, and you want to leave some air gaps. You don't want to smush it in there or you'll make it really hard for yourself to get it back out again. But I threw in a couple of the old pieces that were quite dry and solid, and those will soak up that water and turn right back into regular clay. So I'm going to put that aside. Another thing you may want to have handy is some Ziploc or non-branded resealable bags. So this is the clay that I pulled out of the jar. As you can see, it's got a real nice smush to it. A little soft, but not too bad. Now I'm going to just get the air, all the air out, so make a little gap. And if you just wrap it up like this and try to get all the air out, you can have a tiny bit in there and it's not going to kill it. But you want to try to have as much as you can out of it if you want this to be ready to use next time. So like that, not vacuum sealed, but close enough. And there we go. So there's a nice piece for next time. Be careful not to smush it too much like this. If the bag's not a heavy-duty bag, it will just pop a hole and then you're done. So, but having it like this can store really easily on a shelf and be ready to go. So I ended up even with two bags like this for the amount that I had in that jar. So that'll be nice for next time. This should be just right and ready to go. Okay, pop a little hole. Push this in. So today we're going to be making some fun little dinosaur type creatures. We'll see what happens, but I think they'll be fun and a good starting kind of lesson. You don't have to make them perfect. They can be a little different, and it'll just be fun. So let's get to full screen. Here we go. Again, this is just the natural clay from the dollar store. Got a little water ready to go. Simple set of tools like this, and maybe even just one, and that's it. And the rest is in your hands. So I would recommend using some scissors maybe to open this. This is a little quite stuck and hard to open, so I'm just going to very carefully do that with the knife. Kids, get your parents. And there we go. So as you can see, it's very similar to what I had made, again, just by putting the old dry clay into a jar with water. And this is pretty well sealed, so yeah, again, I'll need scissors or very carefully rip. Yeah, it's not going to rip. So I would say get some scissors, but I'm quite comfortable with a knife, so I'm going to use a knife. All right. So there's really two ways to make a little animal like this out of this kind of clay. You can either add to one lump or carve from one lump and make everything from one piece. That's really the only two ways to go about it. So the only thing you have to think about is how much clay you will need, and you don't really need to be that precise. So I'm guessing at this point should be more than enough. And what you don't want to do is, if you have a little bit of powder on your table from dry clay, you don't want to just slam your nice clean soft clay into that, or you'll have powder bits all over it. So if you want to clean that up, get a little paper towel, get it a little wet, just wipe down your table. Again, it's got to be a table that can get a little wet. Having some paper towels around is probably a good idea too. Also for cleaning your hands, or even having a wet paper towel around to wet the clay or wrap the clay. If you want to continue a project later on, you just get a paper towel soaked, put it on top, and it can last on a shelf for days like that without even having to wrap it with plastic. But if you want to make it last a very long time, you can just put a plastic bag over it. Again, with a wet paper towel inside really helps. But so now you can see the difference in this consistency from the last lesson. This is very smooth, but not as cracky and not as wet to the touch. It's cleaning off my hands actually quite nicely. That powder, leftover powder, is just becoming wet and falling off. So this is great. This is the right kind of clay for this type of thing. I'm going to take about half of that packet, which is probably a 1 pound block. So I'm just guessing at halfway. And let's try both methods. So we'll do a couple different dinosaurs here from different periods, and we will see what happens. So first one we'll make out of the blob. So I'm just gonna keep smushing this blob until I get kind of the rough shape that I want. So everything, when you're making it out of one blob, you have to think about it like you know, everything has to be connected and pulled off of one piece. So you can add to it, obviously, if you want to, but the more you add to it, the more things will want to break off. So if you can make something out of one solid piece, it will hold its shape and last longer. And again, if you want to make this for baking, you will probably have to hollow it out, which means taking a big chunk out of the bottom, which you can do. Well, I might as well show that. So really, I just mean taking like that much out. It doesn't have to be super thin on the walls, but if you're doing like a pinch pot or things like this, this is really all you'd have to do. You just make sort of a shell, and you could fill in the bottom and poke a hole, or just leave it open like that. If you stick it down on something like this, then you're basically ready to go, and that could be baked and kept, because that's not too thick. It's maybe a 1/2 inch thickness in the walls. So yeah, why not? All right, so if we're gonna do, like, let's say a Triceratops laying down, I gotta think about where his limbs, where his tail's gonna be. Very similar to what these kind of dolls are like. This set, you can see how the legs and the tail are all joined to the body in a clean way, but they did add a few little things, but I bet you they pulled a lot of that out. So it looks like the ears were squished out. This is just modeled and pushed like that, and that's about it. There's really not much else to it. So always look at reference if you want to know your shape, the thing that you're trying to make. You can do things from your head, but you're only going to be as good as what you're looking at. So I always recommend, no matter how old you are, to have some kind of reference up and handy. So I'm going to do the same, follow my own advice. If I can type, oh boy, this is going to be tricky. All right, there we go. Google knows what I'm trying to type. So I'm just typing Triceratops and images. And you can even look at a cartoon version. If you wanted to add cartoon Triceratops to the search, you can find really good stuff that way. Okay, so Triceratops has a very big head, big crest on the back of the head, some horns, and a pretty big tail. So what I'm going to do is push the body down a little bit. So without squishing the inside, because remember I've got it hollow here. So I'm just going to smush down a little bit. Now I can't make the crest lifted off the body, but I can pretend that there's a crest there just by holding it like that. And even smushing it with my fingers like that makes it kind of a nice, almost like a bony ridge shape, like a Triceratops, as you can see. So there we go. And if I'm going to do a little baby one, I can make a very big head, a little body, and then the tail can come around like this. Can have a short little tail. And then the legs and everything can be made out of that, and I can even put his front legs under his face. Make it fun. Okay, so Triceratops, because he has 3 horns, so let's see if we can do that. This is the tricky bit. If you're not going to add them on, you got to pinch them out. So I'm going to very carefully pinch 2 little horns. You see I'm just rotating back and forth. And boom. Got that horse down in the middle. Get the little nose horn. I want to see how much of this I can do with just my fingers, because it's a good exercise. But if you have tools, go ahead and use your tools if you want. See, I'm trying to make this not too thin. You want it to be thick enough that it's going to not be weak and break off. So I'm not trying to press underneath there or anything like that. But there we go. Pretty good. So if I want to do simple eyes, I can get my round tool like this and just poke in some little eyes. If I want to do the beak shape, let's see, I'll try it with my fingers first. They do have kind of a beak at the front, so you want to make sure that that's skinny like that. I can even wrap a little bit with my fingers like that. Just using my fingernail shape. Almost looks like a bird beak at the front, which is pretty much what they look like. And then underneath, if you want to be really accurate, you can have the underneath shorter than the top. There we go. Now try not to make these horns too big, especially if it's a little baby. But also because if I stick them out too far, they'll just snap off. Would you see how much easier that is to join than adding? If I were to stick a little piece on, it would be very weak everywhere that it joined, whereas this is very strong because it's all joined from one piece, pulled out. And the rest is just about smoothing. You can wait until it gets a little bit drier. So as I'm handling it, it's getting drier and drier. And it will be easier to smooth out later. So let me get all of the big shapes, and be careful because you will have these crusty, dry bits falling off your fingers as you work. You can always dip your finger in a little water and get that surface wet again. And you see those little dry bits will just disappear. So don't worry about it. You can experiment with this. It's about getting a feel for the clay and seeing what happens as you learn to feel the difference at different levels of wetness. And yeah, I always learn a little bit each time I do it. It's not something that you learn once and know everything. This is a kind of thing that you are always learning, if you're honest with yourself. There we go. I'm trying to make little cute features, so. Oh. Hi. I do not have a Facebook page that's public. I just have Facebook for family chats. You can see my Instagram, though. I do post lots of images of stuff I'm working on. And I do also post my farm animals, my pets, so if you don't mind seeing that. But that's about as personal as I get. Facebook is just something else I don't really use for business, but I'm all over LinkedIn and Instagram, and I don't know if I'm going to ever do TikTok, but we'll see. But thanks for asking. So here we go. You can see where he's going. He's getting a little cute. So let's see what we can do with these body parts here. So as you can see, it got a little smushed in the middle. So I'm gonna be brave and open it back up again, make him a little chubbier, which is totally cool for the little baby. There we go. So now I'm just going to use this tool and run it down to hint at these different shapes that I was talking about. So we'll say that's the tail. The tail joins at the back, middle, so I may have to do something. This tool is not the greatest. So I might just use my fingers again. All right, so you can see there it's starting to dry out, getting a little cracked and not the greatest, but I should be able to press in and get what I want. And if I need to, I can add some water. So there you go. You can see. Little tail, right? So now the legs, if I'm going to do these for real, I'm going to look at that reference again because, you know, like I said, your memory is only as good as what you can hold in your mind. So look at the reference. You'll notice the back legs come out from way up here because that's where the hips are. So if I'm going to do him kind of crouching, maybe laying down, I'm going to just do a little bit like that for the knee. And then leave some for the foot. Yeah, it's not the right shape for this. Let me try the other end. This might work. Yeah, there you go. So that's the kind of thing I wanted. Just a little press in there, hinting at what looks like a leg shape. You see how you don't have to do a ton, and you kind of already have it. So this is the method for, again, this is just pulling out of one piece. I'm trying not to add anything on. I just want to get as much as I can. There. There's the belly, and now the underside of the face. I got to decide whether I want to put the front limbs under his head or make him look like he's maybe laying down. I'm not sure, but his forelimbs are much shorter. Come out from like right there. And then if I want, I can tuck in the belly. And let's say that's the forelimb. There you go, just a couple of presses. We've got the shape that we want, which seems a lot more complex than what we started with, right? And then if you want to take away, you could take away. You don't need to keep all the clay you had started with. But it's still better than having it in one piece with this kind of clay. So the rest, I'm not going to worry too much. I want to just rough out all of as much as I can, as quickly as I can, while the clay is still in this bendable state. Cute, right? It's working. I don't want it to be too thin there, so I'm actually just going to push that clay in and fill in that wall. There we go. Let's give him a little more of a foot. And now one of the trickiest things to do when you're doing anything with clay is making one side look like the other side. And yeah, that's always a trick, but it's good practice. It's good training for your eye and your mind to feel the size of something and make something even on both sides. So hopefully you can see that having this as one piece makes this way stronger like I said, then having joined little bits and bobs on, and also it's a little bit different way of making something, but I don't know, I remember doing it this method when I was very young, and as you can see, it's helped. It's never too young to start. Well, maybe there is. You want to be at least a few years old before you get too into clay. Basically, any child who's prone to eating this kind of thing, I would not recommend starting with clay, but like I said before in my videos, I was lucky enough to have clay in my hands when I was very young, and I think it helped. I think it helped. And when you're doing things like this, the sides don't have to be exactly the same. In fact, sometimes it's a little more interesting when there's a little bit of a difference, or a pose, if you want to call it that. So I'm just kind of guessing and remembering what I had done on the other side. Remember, the tail is already a little different. Don't have to be too perfect with this. Can push this part in. So now you can see it's getting a little dry there, so I'm gonna get that wet again. Now this was a little more difficult because I did carve out the inside. Like I said, if you're just starting out and you want to make something like this, I would say leave it solid, and you can always carve that out afterwards. You can wait till it's maybe half dry, and then you can use a carving loop if you have one of those. I think I have one somewhere, something like this kind of tool. It lets you carve out by just pressing and pulling. So you can change the thickness of the walls that way later, and even take from a solid piece. So if you find that it's falling apart and too hard to hold on to while it's open like this on the bottom, then definitely do it the other way. There we go. Cute little dinosaur, right? And again, you can make the details more, you can make more details later once you let it dry just a little bit. Drop it down like that. Then it makes it a nice little flatness on the bottom. Don't drop it too hard or you will smush it. There we go. How cute is that? All right, I'm pretty happy with that. That was kind of what I was going for. I'm not too worried about it. Again, I can wait till it dries just a little bit before adding some more details, and we're at 20 minutes. All right. So let me show you one other little trick, and I think we'll just stop. This might actually even be a good place to stop. But hopefully that was fun and easy. So the other method is to, of course, add things on. So if you wanted to maybe just add on to this one, make it a little more interesting, I could show you a couple little tricks. So first would be, if we want to let's add some eyeballs in here. So that's too much clay. So if you want to get eyeballs even, best thing to do is kind of guess at the amount, and then try to make a piece and split it exactly in half. What I usually do is use my fingers like this. I press on both sides, make it this double wedge shape, and then if I squeeze and pull a little bit, you can kind of get the same size piece on both sides, and then just twist until I break it. And if it doesn't break in the middle, usually pull a little bit from one to the other. Anyway, there's probably a dozen ways to do that better. But here we go. I want these to be a little bit bigger on purpose. Well, maybe not that big. So that's even too big. So I'm going to even go smaller. Split that in half again. And just show some good little tricks for adding on to this. So if we want to make the eyeballs sticking out, you can just put a little sphere in there, and you can see how already that's something. And then you can have another little tool, maybe press a circle, and sometimes we want a double circle. Depends on the kind of style you want to do here, but having a bigger circle like that Then make them shape like that. And usually eyelids help when you have a character like this. You want to have it look not so crazy eyes. Putting little bits of eyelids on. Now again, this is a good point to make your fingers a little wet, or put maybe a drop of water with your finger like that onto the surface, just so it's not so dry. Get a little thin flat piece. And then it can be like the eyebrow and the eyelid all at once. Look at that. Then you can use your tool, smooth it out a little bit. Maybe you don't want them to look too angry. You see how that helps, right? So there's lots of different ways to change the shapes. You can add, you can poke, but you find what works for you for each type of thing you want to make. Try out some different ideas and have fun with it. So I'm just going to finish this up for the next few minutes and do some details as it starts to dry out. You can see if you get lots of dryness on your tool, just dip it in water, rub it a bit. Yes, this is earth clay or any natural clay. If you go back to the first one, I show exactly the type, but really any type of water-based clay will work like this. So I'm doing this particular series just on terracotta clay for younger audiences because it's less toxic and easily available and fun. But yeah, if you want to turn it into ceramic pottery, you need to have access to a kiln, or usually schools will have one, but again, they probably won't allow you to just bring stuff in from home. But you never know if you get a nice art teacher. So can work on details. Get those nice corners of the mouse I always talk about if I want to make it look a little cartoony and fun. And just finalize some details here. I'm trying to just do it with simple presses, just to show you that you don't have to spend lots of time working on shape to make something look a certain way. Sometimes you can get away with just some simple quick presses and you have what you want. See? Super simple. But yeah, as you can see, this is starting to dry out. So already since the 20 minutes before I started here, this is now much firmer to the touch in these smaller areas. If I start to mess with it, it will break. So you use that to your advantage, and you get used to working with this clay over time. You will feel when you can do different things with it when it's in that state. So now that it's firming up a bit, I can hold its shape a little bit better. I can carve into it a little bit easier without smushing it too much. And there we go. Cute little dinosaur. Alright, that's it for today, for this lesson. I'm going to wrap it up and keep these nice and short. Have fun. Enjoy your clay. I'll get a catchphrase one of these days.